Good morning. It's now about 9:10 on Sunday morning, and we're in the next phase, the final phase. Very few steps, but a lot of ingredients of Swedish Limpa. Rather than watch me measure everything out and mix everything and all of that, just some heads up to keep in mind about what we have. Yeast, salt, the various seeds that we're going to use, some orange zest right there, molasses, milk that I'm about to put into the microwave and warm to make up the 340 grams that I need in liquid to complement the 48 grams of freshly squeezed orange juice. In this case, it's tangerine because I added tangerines in the house. And then I've got my two flours, the rye and the all-purpose flour, and I'll mix all of those together at the same time. When all of this is done, all of it goes into my trusty KitchenAid over here. This is going to be a fairly dense dough. You're going to have a chance to knead it with your hands, and I'm going to do that, and I'll show you that process also. There's an awful lot of feel involved in how this goes. I found with all of these recipes, and especially given the temperatures of winter, it's important to give it plenty of kneading and then let it rise and then lay hands on as little as possible afterwards for fear of deflating the bread, because it takes a very long time for it to recover, if it's going to recover at all in the rising process. So here we go. I'm going to take my seeds and toast. I'm going to grind them in my trusty old coffee grinder that I or Anne-Marie probably had the good sense to retain from years ago. Very handy in the kitchen. There are a variety of things that I've learned in the course of doing this. This is my third time with this recipe, so I'm looking forward to some triage of ideas and bad ideas as opposed to good ones. When it comes time to do the kneading, I am going to do it by hand rather than solely by machine. I want to be able to feel it. I want to know when I think it's done. So that's just an exercise and experience over time with the various doughs that I do. I'm also not certain that I have the strength to, this is really dense and it's going to be hard. Last but not least, in this recipe, there's no mention at the end of the recipe of slashing the dough before it goes into the oven. For whatever reason, my practice, my teaching, all of the courses I've ever taken, you tend to slash dough to let it ventilate, let moisture escape so that you don't have a gap between the crust and the dough, the whole of the bread itself. When I baked this recipe the first time, since there was no instruction to slash it, I decided, by golly, I shall respect what I've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years with King Arthur, and I shall slash it. And that, I think, was a mistake. The slash, rather than being what you see in a bowl of sourdough, where it's a fairly narrow thing that opens up like that, and it's very attractive to look at, and it doesn't dry out the bread, and it certainly does allow the dough to rise to meet the crust. That's true. In this case, it's a fairly moist. You'll notice that it's almost a 1-for-1 of liquid ingredients and flour. And so what you're going to wind up with is a fairly heavy, dense bread inside. If you slash it, the slash is going to go sideways and not upwards as it does with sourdough. So at least for this time, as an experiment, I am not going to slash it. My recipe doesn't slash it. The online recipe that they use for Limpa, which is for a single bread, they do. And I'm just going to see how this goes. It's an experiment, but as we're supposed to be doing Voltaire and philosophy, you take your chances and you learn your lessons. Here we go. I'll see you in about an hour, I suspect, for the formation of the boule of dough to let them rise before they're shaped finally to put into the oven.